When humanity struck first, the galaxy never recovered. The stars shimmered in the endless dark, but peace among them was always a lie. The Orion Rim looked calm from a distance, quiet, cold, beautiful, and yet inside that silence, something waited. The Keth Dominion's border fleet drifted across the void, its ships gleaming like black knives under distant suns. Massive cruisers pulsed with red engine light. Every vessel moved with precision, every signal perfectly timed. For centuries, the Keth ruled this region of space, and their captains believed no one would ever challenge them. To them, humanity was nothing but a rumor, a young species. Fragile, emotional, loud. The stories about humans surviving impossible odds were considered entertainment for drunk pilots and traders. They are soft creatures, the Keth officers would laugh, barely fit for mining colonies. But that night, the laughter died. Inside the command deck of the Keth warship Karsath Prime, Commander Varric sat in his throne-like chair, eyes fixed on the holomap. "Report," he demanded. "All sectors clear, Commander," replied his sensor officer. No activity within 1,000 units. Varric leaned back, confident. "Of course not. No one dares cross our border." Then a tone echoed, a single blip on the scanner. Tiny, unimportant. "Probably a drifting rock," someone said. Another tone followed, then another. Multiple contacts appearing, the officer murmured, confusion creeping into his voice. 20? Now 40. Varric frowned. "Identify them. No response to our signals. No transponder codes. They're just moving straight toward us." The bridge grew colder. Officers exchanged uneasy glances. The scanner filled with dots, each representing a vessel unknown to the Keth. "Send another hail," Varric ordered. "Already did, Commander." Still no reply. The fleet outside stirred, hundreds of Keth warships adjusting their formations. The darkness beyond their border pulsed faintly with movement. And then, the visuals came through. The alien ships emerged from the void like ghosts. No bright banners, no glowing insignias, just shadow black hulls shaped like blades cutting through the starlight. Their engines glowed faint blue, quiet and steady. "Who are they?" one officer whispered. Varric narrowed his eyes. "Humans," he said quietly. "It must be." Laughter rippled through the deck, forced and nervous. "The apes? You think they built that?" But no one laughed for long. The human fleet moved in eerie silence. Perfect formation. No signals. No visible communication. Each ship held its course like a machine guided by one will. "Perhaps they seek diplomacy," someone suggested. "Then where are their diplomats?" Varric snapped. "Why come in war formation?" No one had an answer. The humans kept closing the distance, not too fast, not too slow, just steady, deliberate. Confident. The commander felt it in his chest. That ancient instinct all predators feel when they meet something that hunts better than they do. "Activate shields," he ordered. "Prepare plasma batteries." The fleet obeyed, systems humming to life. Yet deep inside, even the most loyal officers sensed something wrong. The silence of the human ships was too complete, too unnatural. It was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of intent. On the scanners, the shapes multiplied, 50 ships, then 100, then more. An entire armada cloaked in black, advancing without a sound. "Should we call for reinforcements?" an aide asked. Varric glared. "Against humans? Do not insult this fleet." But his voice betrayed the tremor he couldn't hide. The silence pressed against them like a physical weight. No transmissions, no warnings, just the slow, measured approach of steel and purpose. For the first time in his long career, Commander Varric realized something terrifying. He could not read the enemy. They didn't posture. They didn't threaten. They didn't speak. They just came. Outside, the Keth ships adjusted their walls, weapons primed and ready. Inside, hearts beat faster. The air thickened with fear. Varric stood from his chair, fists clenched. If they think to intimidate us, they'll regret it. But as he stared at the advancing fleet, at those cold, silent ships that refused to answer or slow, even he began to wonder if this battle had already been decided long before they noticed the first blip. And in the blackness of space, unseen beyond every scanner's reach, the human flagship shifted its angle. Its hull glimmered once in the starlight, and then disappeared again. The hunt had already begun. The tension on the Keth flagship was a living thing, thick, heavy, pressing against every breath. Commander Varric's claws tapped against the steel armrest of his chair as he stared at the growing wall of human ships filling his main screen. "Form the obsidian line," he barked. Dozens of Keth warships shifted into position, their shields glowing faint red as power surged through their cores. It was a formation designed to crush anything that dared cross the border, a perfect wall of plasma and armor, practiced for centuries. Against pirates, rebels, even small empires, it never failed. The humans didn't react. They just drifted forward, slow, deliberate, impossible to read. Varric's eyes narrowed. "They're testing us," he muttered, "trying to make us nervous." "They're doing a good job," whispered one of his officers. "Enough!" Varric snapped. "They're still human." "Weak, soft. We'll remind them who rules this part of the galaxy." He gestured sharply. "Send a hail again." The comms officer nodded, his fingers dancing over the console. Channel open. "This is Commander Varric of the Keth Dominion," he announced. "You are entering restricted space. Identify yourselves immediately or we will fire." The message vanished into the void. Seconds passed. Then a minute. Still no response. "Strange," the officer murmured. "Their systems are active, but they're not transmitting." "Broken equipment," said another, trying to sound confident. "Primitive tech." Varric didn't reply. Something deep inside him whispered otherwise. This silence wasn't broken. It was chosen. On the observation screens, the human fleet spread out, forming a vast, dark crescent. Hundreds of black ships now faced the Keth line. Still, silent, patient. No movement wasted. "Commander," the tactical officer said, his voice trembling. "We're detecting power buildup across multiple vessels. They're charging something." "Shields up," Varric shouted. "All ships prepare to fire." The Keth fleet glowed as their plasma batteries powered to full. 1,000 cannons hummed like angry suns ready to unleash. Every captain across the formation waited for the order, confident that once the humans saw their strength, they would beg for peace. Still, the humans didn't move. The silence grew unbearable. Finally, Varric snarled, "Fire a warning shot!" A brilliant beam of plasma tore through the dark. It passed just in front of the lead human ship. A deliberate miss, a show of control. The bridge erupted in cruel laughter. "Let's see them tremble now," said one officer. But the laughter died as quickly as it began. The human ship didn't move, didn't respond, didn't even shift course. Instead, faint ripples ran across its black surface. Armor plates slid apart with mechanical precision. Hidden compartments opened like steel petals. And beneath them, weapons. Dozens of turrets and rail cannons extended from the ship's hull, silent but alive. No glow, no sound. Just the quiet preparation of death. The Keth bridge went still. "What are they doing?" a young lieutenant asked, voice shaking. Varric didn't answer. He could feel it in that creeping instinct that something was wrong, deeply wrong. The human fleet began to move again. Not fast, not slow, just steady, a perfect advance. "Commander, they're locking onto us." "Fire now!" Varric roared. The Keth unleashed everything. Plasma, missiles, ion bursts. A storm of light ripped through the void. Space flared white as the full fury of the Keth Dominion struck. When the light faded, the human fleet was still there, untouched. Varric froze. Impossible. "Commander," the sensor officer stammered. "The readings, the shots didn't hit anything. It's like they weren't there when we fired." "How can that be?" "I don't know." Their positions changed mid-volley. "Our targeting can't keep up." "Adjust and fire again," Varric shouted. "Now!" Another barrage. Another blinding storm. And again, nothing. The humans slipped between the attacks like ghosts weaving through fire. Their movements were precise, graceful, and terrifying. Then, from the blackness, one of the human ships turned slightly. Its side panels opened wider. A sharp metallic hum filled the void. Then came the first shot. A beam of white light lanced forward. Clean, fast, silent. A Keth destroyer exploded. Not damaged. Not crippled. Gone. The shock hit the bridge like a physical blow. Officers stumbled back, eyes wide. One hit destroyed it, someone whispered. Another shot. Another flash. Another Keth ship gone. The silence that followed was worse than any scream. Commander Varric stared at the tactical screen, watching his perfect formation tremble. "They're not defending," he said quietly. "They're hunting." The human fleet continued its advance, slow, cold, unstoppable. On every Keth bridge, panic whispered in the corners. For the first time in 1,000 years, the predators of the border felt what their prey once felt: fear. And as the next human volley lit up the stars, Varric finally understood the truth. The humans had not come to talk. They had come to strike. The void erupted in fire. Beams of plasma streaked through space, lighting the darkness like 1,000 suns. The Keth Dominion's fleet roared with fury, their cannons screaming, their missiles slicing through the black toward the human armada. It should have been overwhelming. No enemy could have survived that kind of barrage. But the humans did. Every blast missed. Every missile found nothing but empty space. The Keith scanners showed targets shifting faster than their systems could track. The human ships glided between explosions with impossible precision. Smooth, silent, untouchable. They moved like predators that already knew where every attack would fall. Commander Varric slammed his clawed hand against the armrest. "What kind of trickery is this?" "Unknown, Commander," shouted the tactical officer. "They're engines that we can't even get proper readings. It's like they're bending the sensors. They can't hide forever. Keep firing." Another wave of plasma storms tore through the void. The explosions flared so bright that even the stars seemed to vanish behind them. When the light faded, the human fleet was gone. Not destroyed. Gone. The screens flickered, trying to adjust. Then the humans reappeared, and closer this time. Much closer. How did they move that fast? An officer gasped. Varric's jaw clenched. "They're using stealth drives. Some kind of advanced jump technology. But deep down he knew this wasn't simple stealth. This was precision. This was control." A ripple ran through the human formation. Dozens of ships turned at once like soldiers responding to a silent command. Then without warning, the lead vessel opened its side panels again. The first shot came with no sound, only light. A rail slug ripped across the void faster than any eye could follow. It hit a Keth destroyer head-on. The ship didn't explode immediately, it simply came apart. The front half disintegrated into a cloud of molten fragments. The back half spun silently away before vanishing into fire. A breathless pause swept across the Keth fleet. Then 3 more shots followed. One cruiser split open from bow to stern. Another's shields collapsed before its core detonated. A third vanished in a sphere of orange light. Every human round hit with the precision of a surgeon's blade. "Commander," the comms officer shouted. "We're losing ships. They're cutting through our formation." "Keep formation," Varric ordered. "Overwhelm them with numbers." But there was no order left to keep. The Keth formation wavered as human ships slipped between them, weaving through the chaos like wolves among panicked prey. The black hulls reflected nothing, no energy, no light. They were ghosts, invisible until the moment they fired. And when they fired, something died. On the tactical screen, red markers bloomed one after another. Destroyed. 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 "How are they reloading so fast?" one officer cried. "Their weapons shouldn't—" A blast of light cut off his words. The deck shook as a shockwave rippled through the ship. "They hit the left flank," shouted another. Varric turned to the window. Outside, 3 Keth cruisers were nothing but drifting wreckage. Their hulls burned silently, venting trails of glowing debris. The commander's mouth went dry. "No," he whispered. "This isn't war. This is slaughter." The humans didn't gloat, didn't broadcast a message, didn't demand surrender. They just advanced. More rail slugs cut across the darkness. "More ships fell apart, sir," yelled the comms officer. "Our long-range beacons are jammed. We can't send for reinforcements." Varric froze. "Jammed? You mean—" "Yes, Commander. The humans are blocking everything." A cold realization crawled down his spine. Not only had they come prepared for battle, they'd come prepared to erase the witnesses. "They knew," he whispered. "They knew exactly where we'd be." On the observation window, one of the smaller human ships rotated gracefully. A set of fins unfolded from its side like the wings of a bird of prey. It slid past a Keith frigate, so close their shields almost touched, then fired a single rail round through its center. The frigate erupted, torn in half in a heartbeat. "They're inside the formation." A voice screamed. "We can't hit them. Reroute all power to weapons," Varric roared. "Fire on everything that moves." But it was too late. Human ships danced through the chaos like predators in a feeding frenzy, precise, quiet, merciless. Each movement was rehearsed, perfect. Every Keth volley fired into empty space. Every human counterstrike landed clean. The great obsidian line shattered, its proud symmetry breaking apart. Keth captains shouted conflicting orders. Fleets collided, shields failed, weapons overheated. Panic spread like wildfire, and the humans kept coming. Varric watched, powerless, as one of his finest dreadnoughts was hit square in the core. The explosion turned night into day for a moment, then nothing but dust. The commander gripped his chair, his claws digging into the metal. "How can they do this?" he whispered. "How did we not see this coming?" No one answered. Outside, the humans glided through the ruins of his fleet like shadows through flame, calm, efficient, unstoppable, and for the first time in the history of the Keth Dominion, the predators realized what it felt like to be hunted. The humans had struck first, and the Keth never even had a chance. The Keth Dominion fleet, once a wall of perfect order, had become a storm of chaos. Shattered ships drifted through the void, their engines flickering like dying stars. The great obsidian line was gone, replaced by confusion, panic, and fear. Commander Varric's bridge was filled with noise. Alarms screamed. Officers shouted over one another. Smoke filled the air from a blown-out console. He could barely hear his own voice when he roared, "Hold the line! Reform the fleet! Bring the cruisers to the front!" But no one could hold the line. The humans were already inside the formation, moving with impossible coordination. Their ships weaved between the Keth vessels as if they could see the enemy's every move before it happened. "Commander," a young officer shouted. "They're too fast. Our targeting systems can't keep up." "Then use manual targeting," Varric snapped. "We tried. They're jamming the sensors. We can't get a lock." Varric slammed his fist into the armrest. "How can they jam us at this range? Their technology shouldn't—" Before he could finish, the flagship shook violently. Sparks rained from the ceiling. The deck tilted. "Hit on the lower starboard side," someone yelled. "Shields holding? Down to 60%. Through the viewport, Varric saw a scene he could barely believe. A Keth destroyer, one of their strongest ships, had tried to ram a human frigate head-on. The human ship simply rotated sideways at the last second, a long, sharp weapon extended from its flank, like a sword sliding from a sheath. The destroyer hit that blade and split cleanly in two. Both halves drifted apart, spilling burning fragments into the void. The bridge went silent. No one breathed. "What kind of weapon was that?" whispered an officer. Varric couldn't answer. He could only stare at the distant human ship, sleek, dark, untouchable. Then another human vessel opened its hull. This time, instead of a rail cannon, it released dozens of small glowing orbs. They moved like living things, darting between debris, weaving around wreckage. Each one found a target, a Keth ship, and drilled straight through its shields before detonating inside. One by one, the Keth warships exploded. "They're using autonomous weapons," cried the tactical officer. "Those orbs, they're adapting to our countermeasures." "Destroy them," Varric shouted. "All flak cannons, fire at will." But it was useless. The swarm moved too fast, too smart. The Keth defenses couldn't stop them. In less than 2 minutes, 6 more ships were gone. The commander's heart pounded. How could humans build this? He whispered to himself. They were primitive not a decade ago. Then came the voice of his first officer, trembling but clear. "Maybe they've been preparing, Commander, maybe. This is what they were waiting for." Varric turned sharply. "You think they planned this?" "I think," the officer said, eyes on the burning wreckage outside. "They've been watching us for years." A sudden flash blinded the bridge. The largest human ship, massive, silent, terrifying, had moved to the center of the battlefield. Its hull began to shift, panels sliding apart in perfect rhythm. "What are they doing?" Varric demanded. The tactical officer stared, speechless. "I don't know. But whatever it is, we're not ready." A line of glowing barrels extended from the human flagship's core. The air on the Keth bridge seemed to freeze. "Target that ship," Varric screamed. "All vessels and focus everything on the largest human ship." Now the remaining Keth warships obeyed. Beams of plasma, ion blasts, missile storms, every weapon they had lit up the dark. The combined energy was enough to vaporize a moon. But when the light faded, the human flagship was still there, untouched. What happened?" gasped the comms officer. "The blasts just vanished." "They're using shields," Varric growled. "But not normal ones." The tactical officer's voice was shaking. It's not reflecting the energy, it's absorbing it. The readings show the power is gone, completely absorbed into their systems. Before anyone could react, the human flagship answered. A massive cannon along its spine glowed with white light, brighter than any star. The hum deepened, rising to a sharp, deadly pitch. "Brace for impact," someone screamed. The beam fired. A single blinding pulse cut across the void, slicing straight through 3 Keth ships in one sweep. They didn't explode immediately. They simply broke apart, their cores flickering like dying embers. The Keth fleet fell silent. Even the alarms seemed muted beneath the horror. Then more beams, faster, sharper, merciless. Every second, another Keth vessel disappeared, torn apart by weapons beyond comprehension. "Commander," whispered his first officer, his voice hollow, "we can't fight this." Varek's claws dug into his chair. "We don't retreat. The Dominion never retreats." But deep down, even he knew the truth. This wasn't a battle anymore. It was execution. He stared at the screen, watching his proud fleet crumble before the cold, silent precision of the human war machine. No boasts, no threats, no mercy. The humans didn't come to negotiate. They came to end it, and they were doing exactly that. The stars burned red with the ghosts of battle. Where the proud Keth Dominion fleet had once stood, now only wreckage drifted. Twisted metal, shattered hulls, and the fading embers of plasma fires. The void itself seemed scarred. The human fleet moved slowly among the ruins. Their black ships glided without sound, engines whispering like faint heartbeats in the dark. They didn't celebrate. They didn't speak. They simply worked. Small vessels detached from the main fleet, scanning the debris, collecting fragments, data cores, and wreckage. Every piece of metal, every signal trace, gathered and stored with silent precision. Inside the human flagship Artemis Prime, the bridge glowed with pale blue light. Officers stood calm, their movements quiet and disciplined. They did not cheer their victory. They treated it like a task completed. Captain Mira Kor, the fleet commander, stared at the hollow display of destroyed Keth ships. Her face was expressionless. "Status," she said quietly. "All Keth vessels neutralized," replied her first officer. "No transmissions escaped the battlefield. Their communication grid is silent." "Good," Mira replied. "Begin recovery protocols. Collect everything of value." "Yes, ma'am." No one questioned her. No one smiled. They knew this battle wasn't about pride or revenge, it was about survival. Humanity had been mocked, underestimated, dismissed. Now the galaxy would remember their silence. Far away, beyond the ruins, the first whispers began. A Keth smuggler ship, hidden near an asteroid field, caught fragments of the fight. Broken signals, flashes of energy too powerful to be natural. The smugglers recorded what they could and fled, terrified. Within hours, rumors spread across the trade routes. "They say the Dominion fleet was wiped out," one voice whispered in a smoky bar on the world of Zarn 5. "By who?" another asked. "The humans." Laughter followed. Nervous, unsure. But when hollows of wreckage appeared, laughter turned to silence. The images were undeniable. Thousands of tons of Keth war metal reduced to drifting dust. No one wanted to believe it. But the truth was already out. On the neutral world of Taralis Prime, news feeds began reporting it as the silent battle. No survivors, no distress calls, no warning, just silence and then nothing. In the grand halls of other empires, diplomats dismissed the story as propaganda. "Humans cannot defeat a Keth armada," they said. "Impossible." Yet their admirals analyzed the sensor data, and none could explain what they saw. Weapons fired faster than physics allowed. Shields absorbed energy instead of reflecting it. It made no sense, and that terrified them. Back on the ruined frontier, human salvage drones floated between the remains. They moved like insects among bones, slicing open Keth wrecks, pulling out engines and reactors. Every piece was studied, recorded, and sent back toward Earth. Not a single Keth escape pod was found. Or perhaps, none were allowed to be found. The Artemis Prime sent no transmissions, not even a victory message. Their orders were clear: no contact, no exposure. The galaxy was already watching, already afraid. The silence would do the rest. In the Keth Dominion's capital world, chaos spread like fire. Officials tried to hide the truth, claiming the border skirmish was a minor incident. and that the humans were repelled. But evidence leaked anyway. Fragments of human rail slugs recovered by scouts, distress recordings cut short mid-scream, thermal echoes of destruction that couldn't be denied. Within days, riots broke out in the outer colonies. Soldiers refused to deploy. Entire fleets hesitated to patrol near human space. The once proud Dominion trembled under the weight of fear. "How many fleets do they have?" asked one Keth general in a panicked council meeting. "If one human force can erase an armada, what happens if they send two?" No one answered, and yet humanity stayed silent. No messages, no demands, no invasions. They just left. One moment the human warfleet was there, black and burning against the stars, and the next, it was gone. No light trails, no transmissions, only silence. That silence spread faster than any weapon. It traveled through trade routes, through pirate channels, through diplomatic circles. People began calling it the quiet fear. Children whispered stories about the black ships that appeared without warning. Pirates changed their maps to avoid human colonies. Smugglers deleted their routes through Sol space entirely. Even in the great empires, the ones that once mocked humanity, meetings grew tense. "What if they strike again?" one admiral asked. "Strike who?" Another replied. "You? Me? Any of us?" The silence between them was answer enough. Across the galaxy, fear replaced arrogance. Humanity had spoken only once, not with words, but with fire. Now their silence spoke louder than anything else. And in the cold between stars, far beyond scanners and politics, the Artemis Prime and its sister ships turned toward deep space, engines glowing faint blue as they vanished into the dark. No lights. No sound. No trace. Only the quiet echo of a message the galaxy would never forget. Don't mistake silence for weakness. Weeks passed. The battle was over, but the fear remained. Across the galaxy, the silence of humanity had become a legend. No one knew what the humans wanted. No one dared to ask. The Keth Dominion tried to rebuild its image, declaring victory in official broadcasts. "The border incident was exaggerated," said their news anchors with trembling voices. "Our forces successfully pushed the humans back." But the people knew the truth. Entire fleets had vanished. Entire systems had gone quiet, and not a single piece of evidence showed human losses. Merchants refused to travel near human space. Smugglers swore they had seen black ships drifting through the lanes, silent, shadowy watching. Even the bravest captains changed their routes rather than risk crossing paths with the silent armada. The galaxy waited for a message, for a demand, for anything, but Earth said nothing. Then, one ordinary cycle on the neutral world of Teralis Prime, every screen in the city flickered. Markets froze. Ships halted mid-dock. Hollow advertisements dissolved into static. And a single broadcast appeared across every frequency, every network, every ship. It wasn't from the Keth, it wasn't from any empire. It was from Earth. The image came slowly into focus. A man stood against a dark metallic background. He wasn't wearing armor or medals, just a plain black uniform with a small insignia on the chest, a blue circle, faintly glowing. His face was calm, his eyes steady. He looked straight into the camera. "You called us weak," he said. His voice was quiet, steady, but it carried across every channel like thunder. "You mocked our species. You called our world small, our bodies fragile, our minds simple." Around the galaxy, millions of beings stopped what they were doing. Leaders leaned closer to their screens. Soldiers froze in the middle of their duties. Civilians stared in silence. "For centuries," the man continued, "we endured your scorn. We watched as your empires grew fat on the bones of others. We saw your fleets move closer to our colonies, one star at a time." He took a slow breath, and we waited. The room behind him darkened as images appeared, holographic projections of the destroyed Keth fleet. Broken ships, fire, silence. "We do not seek conquest," he said. "We do not seek glory, but we will not be prey." His eyes hardened. "When you strike us, we strike back. When you threaten us, we end the threat." Across the Keth Dominion, officers sat frozen, staring at the transmission in horror. This wasn't a warning. This was a declaration of nature. "You think of war as domination," the man said. "We think of it as survival." He stepped closer to the camera. his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried everywhere at once. You called us silent. You were right. We don't roar before we bite. We don't warn before we act. A pause. Then we are humanity. And we are done running. The feed cut out. No ending statement. No demands. Just black. Across the galaxy, chaos erupted. In the Keth capital, emergency meetings began immediately. Generals shouted over each other, demanding retaliation. But no one dared move a single ship toward human space. On other worlds, panic spread faster than any fleet. Merchants canceled routes. Colonies locked down. In the great empires, council chambers fell silent. Leaders stared at one another, trying to mask their fear. They said they do not want war, whispered one ruler. But what if this is war? Then, another replied, we have already lost. Back on Earth, the broadcast room went dark again. The man who had spoken, Admiral Elias Ward, stood alone in the silence. No applause, no sound. He turned toward his reflection in the glass. Do you think they understood? A voice asked behind him. They understood enough, Ward said quietly. Fear speaks louder than any translation. Outside, through the windows of the orbital command tower, Earth glowed below, blue, fragile, beautiful. Above it, the silent armada waited in low orbit, hundreds of ships like black silhouettes against the stars. No movement, no signals, no banners, just patience. Admiral Ward watched them for a long time before speaking again. Let them call us monsters, he said, as long as they never try to cage us again. And with that he turned off the last screen. Throughout the galaxy, the broadcast burned itself into history. It was replayed in secret on 1,000 worlds, studied in military academies, whispered in the dark by children who had never even seen a human. No one could forget the calm in that man's voice. No one could forget the silence that followed because it wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Humanity had spoken once, and the stars would never be the same again. The galaxy had never been this quiet. Every empire, every trading guild, every pirate clan, all of them waited in the same uneasy silence, afraid to move, afraid to speak the wrong word into the void. The humans had spoken once, and then they vanished. In the weeks that followed the broadcast, fear rippled through the stars like an invisible wave. Entire fleets were recalled. Border systems darkened their signals. No one wanted to be seen near human space. The Keth Dominion was breaking apart. What was once an empire built on fear had become a nation of whispers and doubts. Admirals accused each other of weakness. Generals deserted their posts. And in the palace of the High Regent, chaos reigned. We must retaliate, shouted one minister. If we show weakness, every race will mock us. With what fleet? Another barked. We lost everything at Orion's edge. We can't even scan their movements. The regent slammed his clawed fist against the table. Then build more ships. But the engineers had already tried. They'd found fragments of human weapons lodged in destroyed hulls. The material refused to melt. The design was beyond comprehension. Even their brightest scientists couldn't understand how the humans had done it. It was as if they'd been preparing in secret for centuries. Far across the galaxy, the other empires fared no better. The Veyron Dominion, proud and ancient, quietly canceled all expeditions near Sol space. The Tarkin Republic withdrew its scouts from the frontier, and the pirate confederacies, once fearless, rewrote their codes. Rule 1. Don't raid near human colonies. Rule 2. If you see a black ship, turn around and run. Whispers turned into warnings. Warnings became myths. Children of alien worlds whispered bedtime fears of the silent ships, shadows that came without warning and left nothing behind. The fear was worse than war, because no one knew what the humans would do next. Back on Earth, the sky above the oceans shimmered with quiet light. The silent armada hung in orbit like a crown of steel, its black hulls reflecting nothing but the faint glow of the planet below. In the orbital command tower, Admiral Elias Ward stood by the window, staring down at his home world. Cities twinkled beneath the clouds, peaceful and unaware of the terror spreading across the stars. Behind him, Captain Mirakor stepped forward. The fleet is ready for redeployment, sir. No movement detected from any neighboring systems. Ward didn't answer immediately. His reflection looked older than he remembered. Do you think they understand us now, Captain? He asked quietly. Mira's voice was calm but cold. They understand what happens when they cross us. Ward nodded. Good. Let them keep guessing. Fear is more powerful than any weapon. He turned from the window, his boots echoing softly on the metal floor. Continue silent protocols. No transmissions. No public statements. Let the silence work. Yes, Admiral. Outside, the fleet began to move. Slowly, silently, the massive warships rotated, engines glowing with dim blue light. One by one, they slipped into the dark. No jump flashes, no beacons, no trace. The silent armada was gone again. No one knew where they were headed. Not the governments watching from their observatories. Not the spies embedded in human colonies. Not even the smugglers who haunted the border routes. The ship simply vanished beyond the outer rim. Into the black between galaxies. Some said they were returning to Earth. Others whispered they were hunting something new. But the truth was simpler. The humans were watching, preparing, waiting. Because silence was their greatest weapon, and patience was its blade. On distant worlds, entire civilizations lived in quiet dread. Every flicker on a scanner, every shadow near a star made commanders flinch. Was it a drifting rock, or another human fleet? Empires that once mocked Earth now avoided even speaking its name. Diplomats replaced insults with cautious offers of trade. Admirals studied human tactics, but none could copy them. Because humanity's strength wasn't just in its weapons, it was in its will. The will to endure. The will to adapt. The will to survive no matter the odds. In the endless dark between stars, the silent armada moved again. No sound, no light. Just purpose. Somewhere out there, another empire would make the same mistake, to underestimate them. And when that happened, the humans would strike again. Not for conquest, not for revenge, but to remind the galaxy of one simple truth. Humanity does not ask for respect. It earns it. The stars shimmered faintly as the last human warship disappeared into the void. No beacon followed. No trace remained. Only the whisper that echoed across 1,000 worlds. They don't warn. They don't talk. They just arrive, and then you're gone. And in that silence, every empire held its breath, because somewhere in the dark between galaxies, the shadows were moving again. They ran again, racing toward the beacon towers. But as they neared the base, Sarah stopped suddenly, her expression turning cold with dread. "Rafe," she whispered, "we're not alone." From the shadows between the towers, a figure stepped forward, tall, armored in black and gold, his visor gleaming crimson. His voice was calm, commanding. "The empath. The human, you've caused quite enough trouble." Rafe raised his rifle. "You must be their commander." "I am Kale Varen," the Dravari said. "Shadow captain of the Imperium." He looked at Sarah. "And you, Lumeran, belong to me." Sarah's voice was steady but low. "I belong to no one." Kale's gaze shifted to Rafe. "You've survived longer than expected, human." "Impressive for a primitive." Rafe smirked. "You talk too much." Kale tilted his head slightly and then moved. One blink and he was gone. The next instant he was behind them, blade igniting with a hiss. Rafe barely had time to turn before the strike came. He blocked with his rifle, the force throwing him backward. Sparks flew, the impact rattling through his bones. Kale struck again, and again. Each swing faster, more precise, more lethal. Rafe fought to keep up. Every move powered by adrenaline and fury. Sarah's voice echoed through the chaos. "Rafe, his mind, it's not shielded. I can reach him, do it!" Rafe shouted, she focused, her eyes glowing fiercely. A wave of psychic light pulsed outward, slamming into Kale. He staggered, his blade flickering. What are you?" he growled. Rafe seized the moment. He lunged forward, driving his rifle butt into Kale's chest, then fired point blank. The shot threw the Dravari commander off his feet, crashing into the sand. Kyle looked up at them. His mask cracked, black blood trickling down his face. "You can kill me," he said, "but the Imperium will come. They will burn your worlds to ash." Rafe stared down the barrel of his rifle. "Then I'll make sure they choke on the smoke." He pulled the trigger. The blast lit the night like lightning. When the dust settled, Kale Varen was gone. Nothing left but scorched armor and the hiss of cooling sand. Rafe lowered the rifle slowly. His hands shook. Sarah stood beside him, the wind whipping her silver hair across her face. "You saved us," she said softly. He glanced at her, bloodied and exhausted. "No," he said. "We saved each other." She looked toward the beacon towers ahead, glowing faintly against the sky. "If I can activate it, my father will come. But the signal will be strong enough for the Dravari to detect too. Rafe nodded. Then we'd better be ready for round 2. The stars above them flickered in the vast, cold sky, silent witnesses to a war that was only beginning, and somewhere beyond the horizon, the Imperium was already listening. The night wind tore across the plateau, carrying the taste of metal and ash. The Lumeran beacon loomed ahead, tall and silver, half buried in sand like a monument to forgotten wars. It pulsed faintly, ancient tech waiting to wake. Rafe stood at its base, rifle slung low, blood drying on his torn jacket. His breath came ragged, but his eyes stayed sharp. Beside him, Sarah pressed her glowing hands to the beacon's core. Her silver hair drifted in the electric air. The collar around her neck still blinked weakly like a dying heartbeat. "It's responding," she said, voice trembling with focus. "If I can amplify the signal, my father's fleet will hear it." "Do it fast," Rafe said. "We don't have long." He turned his gaze to the horizon. The desert was alive with movement, dust trails, flickers of plasma light. The Dravari weren't retreating. They were regrouping. Dozens of soldiers now, moving like shadows across the dunes. The crash of Kelverin's ship hadn't stopped them. It had only made them angry. Rafe checked the power cell in his rifle, then the small explosive pack he'd rigged earlier. 2 charges left. Not enough to stop an army, but enough to make one hell of a message. Behind him, Sarah's voice rose, tense and urgent. "The beacon's link is opening, but the collar—" He turned. Sparks shot from the metal ring around her neck. She screamed, falling to her knees as the lights on it turned crimson. Rafe sprinted to her. "Sarah, it's fighting me," she gasped. "It knows I'm sending the signal. It's trying to overload." Rafe gripped the collar, ignoring the burn of the current. "Tell me what to do." "Break the control node," she whispered. "Under the left panel, now." He pulled his knife, jammed it under the collar's plate, and wrenched it open. Circuits flared white-hot. Sparks flew across his hands, slicing his skin. But he didn't stop. With a final twist, the collar snapped and fell to the ground with a hiss. Sarah slumped forward, breathing hard. The glow from her skin flared bright, then settled into a steady light. She looked up at him, eyes full of shock and wonder. "It's gone," Rafe smiled grimly. "Good, because we're not done yet." She rose unsteadily, placing both hands on the beacon. The structure began to hum, low at first, then rising in pitch. Blue light rippled up its surface, shooting toward the sky in a blinding column. Far above, the clouds parted. The signal raced into orbit, a single flare piercing the void. "They'll hear it," she whispered. "My people will come." Rafe looked toward the desert. The first wave of Dravari soldiers crested the ridge, weapons glowing. Then they'd better hurry. He raised his rifle and fired. The first shots cut through the dust, dropping 2 of the advancing figures. Plasma bolts screamed back in reply, smashing into the rocks around them. Sarah knelt behind the beacon, channeling its energy. "I can shield you for a moment," she said. "But not for long." A shimmering field flickered around them, catching plasma blasts mid-air. The barrier rippled like water each time it was hit. Rafe fired through the gaps, his shots precise, methodical. Every pull of the trigger echoed his heartbeat. The Dravari closed in. 10 meters, then 5. Rafe triggered the first explosive. The blast tore through the front ranks, scattering soldiers and sending a shockwave across the dunes. But more shapes moved behind the smoke, hundreds, maybe more. "Rafe!" Sarah shouted. "The beacon is at full power, but they'll destroy it before it transmits completely." He looked down at the last charge clipped to his belt, then at the beacon glowing like a star behind her. "Not if I buy it time," he said. Her eyes widened. "No, it's the only way. That blast will take out the ridge and bury the beacon deep enough to finish transmitting." Tears welled in her eyes. "You'll die." Rafe gave a faint, crooked grin. "I've been dying since the war. This just makes it count." Before she could stop him, he pressed the detonator control into her palm. "If the signal cuts out, finish it." Rafe pleased it, but he was already moving. Charging down the slope, rifle blazing, shouts echoing in the wind. Plasma bolts tore past him, searing the ground. He didn't flinch. Each step was fire, pain, and purpose. The Dravari formation hesitated, just long enough. Rafe dived behind a rock outcrop, pressed the detonator trigger on his suit, and whispered one final word into the comlink. "Humanity says hello." The explosion lit the desert like a second sunrise. The shockwave rolled for miles, scattering soldiers and shattering the ridge. The beacon, half buried in sand, pulsed one last time, its light reaching the heavens. Silence followed. Then above the smoke-filled sky, something answered. 3 silver ships descended through the clouds, their hulls glowing with the soft white of Lumaran energy. They hovered over the battlefield, their presence like the dawn after endless night. Sarah stood among the ruins, her cloak torn, her face streaked with dust and tears. The beacon's light washed over her as she stared at the crater where Rafe had been. A soft voice spoke behind her, calm, melodic, and achingly familiar. "Daughter." She turned to see a tall figure stepping from the lead ship, his silver eyes filled with both sorrow and pride. "Father," she whispered. He reached out, touching her shoulder gently. "Your message reached us. You have done well." Her gaze turned back to the crater, her voice breaking. "He saved us all." The ambassador followed her eyes and nodded slowly. "Then his name will be remembered." Above them, the fleet formed a shimmering barrier across the sky. Far off, other lights stirred in orbit. The Dravari ships withdrawing, defeated for now. Sarah looked to the stars, the glow of the beacon reflecting in her eyes. "He thought he was just a man who cut trees," she whispered. "But he was so much more." The Lumaran ambassador placed a hand over his heart. "Humanity," he said softly, "always burns brightest in its last breath." As the dawn rose over Kestrel, the wind carried away the last embers of battle, and with them the story of Rafe Morgan, the lumberjack who defied an empire and lit the stars once more.